and welcome to the Squeeze. Today we have Stacy Maynard, an individual who survived multiple gunshot wounds and was stabbed multiple times. Um, Welcome to the show, Stacy.
Hi, thank you, Jonathan.
Absolutely. Welcome, and to get right to um, going through this situation that you were involved in, could you please walk me through the events of October 7th, 2015?
Sure. Um, okay. I had been seeing this guy named Rodney approximately 4 years, 3.5 to 4 years. Um, Rodney was my best friend. He was a great person. If you knew Rodney and you were around Rodney, you were laughing. Um, Rodney had started this new job with this individual um, named Willie Nathan Jones. They actually worked together. They had worked together 5 years prior to this, but they had just recently started a job together, and they were working together at a place here in my hometown. I had met this individual maybe 3 to 4 times.
Really an acquaintance.
Yes, Rodney had a flat tire on a truck that belonged to him. And he told me on the way to his house that he was going to have this guy, Willie Nathan Jones, come and help him change the tire on his truck. So Willie Nathan Jones, he showed up at Rodney's house that night, and he helped him change his tire. Rodney and I was actually staying at Rodney's that night. In the early morning hours, I want to say maybe 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Sounds about right. 3:30 or 4 maybe. I heard noises outside, like someone was driving up the driveway. Rodney lived in a very remote area, and his driveway was a gravel driveway, and it was very steep, and so you could hear the gravel outside of Rodney's residence. So
Right.
you could hear the gravel outside of Rodney's residence. So
Right.
Rodney and I were in the bed, so I woke Rodney up. I told him that, I heard someone outside, and he went to the door, and he opened the door, and a few moments later he came back and he informed me that it was Willie Nathan Jones. I was startled, at this time in the morning, so I got up, and I was like, what in the heck does he want?
Yeah, what are you doing here at this peculiar hour?
Yes. And so, Rodney, I followed him down the hallway. As we approached the living room, Mr. Jones was actually coming in through the front door, which was, in the living room, of course. And Rodney had turned to my left, and he went towards the couch area, I assumed to sit down. Mr. Jones continued to come in, from the front door. I went to the cabinet, and I was going to get a drink out of the refrigerator, and so I got a glass out of the cabinet, and I set it on the countertop, and as I started towards the refrigerator, I heard this sound, something like I'd never heard before. It was the loudest sound I've ever heard. It was an explosion. I was really unsure at this point, really what was going on. I never imagined that this night would turn into gun violence. So I was really unsure what I'd heard. Of course, and naturally, I looked to Rodney, to see what's going on. And, Rodney, he has a confused look on his face, and he grabs for his chest, and he he utters the words, "Why, Jonesy, why?"
Wow.
And he uttered those words, and I saw a little blood coming down from the side of Rodney's head.
Unbelievable.
And Mr. Jones was holding a pistol.
Okay. So
Um,
at this point, did you feel that this was obviously, you knew obviously at this point that this was not friend, this was something different?
I knew this wasn't just your normal argument, or I knew that this had to be something serious.
Right.
I I was really unsure of what was going on at this point. But I knew, I had this unsettling feeling, I knew that I was next.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I
What
felt,
did you do?
well, um, Rodney, in his kitchen, there was a side by side refrigerator and freezer. One door open, it's the long doors, and one opens one way and one the other for freezer and refrigerator. And so the freezer, I actually just grabbed that freezer door and pulled it in front of me to shield me. That was the quickest thing that I could think to do in that position.
As if to shield yourself in
Yes,
some capacity
yes,
for what was coming your direction.
yes.
So,
I never heard Rodney speak after that. I only had hopes that he would make it through this.
right.
I I
Rodney
knew.
was Rodney
Um,
was still in the living room at this point.
yeah,
Um,
yes.
did you
Right.
see him? Could you see him from where you were at?
From behind the freezer door, I couldn't see anything. I could only see through the crack in the door, and I could see Willie Nathan Jones's figure coming closer,
Wow. Wow.
to me. So I didn't know what to do. I believe that I believe I got the broom after him at some point.
A last stitch effort and a deterrent in some ways.
Yeah,
So, Willie Nathan Jones is now in the kitchen with you.
yeah.
Where from here do we go?
Okay. Rodney, the place that Rodney lived was not very big. The kitchen and the living room were only separated by a bar. Um, so it was not very large. So it was just maybe a couple steps into the kitchen before he was out of the living room where he entered the door. So I slammed the door. The door didn't do me any justice. I the door swings back and forth a few times. I push it and I pushed the door on closed, and I began pleading with Willie Nathan Jones as, I'm studying my options. And in the position that I was in, the only other possible thing that I could have done other than approach him would be to try to run and make it out of a sliding glass door, which happened to be in the kitchen, but was locked. And there was no steps leading to the ground. There had never been any steps built up to that sliding glass door. So I knew that that was kind of not an option for me to get it unlocked and to make it out that door without him shooting me in the back. And so I just held my hands up, in front of the gun, in front of him, which he had aimed right at my face, at a very close range. As I was taking a few steps forward, he would take a few steps backwards. And so at this point, we end up and we're back in the living room. I never take my eyes off of Mr. Jones as bad as I wanted to. I definitely wanted to know if Rodney was okay. But I knew that in one split second that, Willie Nathan Jones could easily squeeze that trigger and kill me. And so I focused on him, and I was begging with him and, pleading, that I have children, and that, to please not take my life. I, through all my begging and pleading, he never spoke. He was just cold. He had a strange look in his eyes. There was never no argument that ensued to provoke this in any type of way.
Do
Um,
you believe that Willie Nathan Jones was under the influence or suffering possibly from some sort of mental illness? Uh,
both very good possibilities. I do believe that possibly he was under the influence. I had never seen him act in such a bizarre manner before.
right,
Um, but I do believe that, something was going on with him. But at this point, we are in the living room, and at my begging, it just falls on deaf ears. I can tell that he is going to shoot me, and I jerk my chin in, and he squeezes this trigger. I'm watching him squeeze the trigger,
right,
and all I can do is pull my head in to my chest and just pray. And so, that's what I began doing, and I just began praying. And at this point, I felt like I had been hit in the face. My ears were ringing. It was a very, very high percussion sound in my ears. I was, everything's kind of blurry at this point, but one thing really stands out, and that is the rich iron taste that I have in my mouth.
oh wow. So this is the taste of blood.
Absolutely. And a lot of it.
Oh wow.
Um, I still was really unsure of the damage that was done, and to be honest, I thought that I would fall over dead at any moment. You rarely hear of people being shot in the face,
Right.
surviving. So I began to feel this warmth on my chest, and I was wearing a white thermal long sleeve shirt, and I look down at my shirt, and I have this huge red ball on my chest, and it just begins growing, and it's blood that is saturating through my shirt.
Oh, wow.
I focused back on Willie Nathan Jones, and he is doing something with the gun that I assumed that after watching him that it was a slide action and that it had jammed. I was really unsure of the weapon that he had chose that night. I was not familiar with guns at all, really, and so I didn't know what he was doing, but I had this idea that it was jammed.
Right.
As soon as I could hear I heard the sound of a slide action gun, I knew that weapon was ready to fire.
Right.
And so I immediately, after we had been struggling a little and he was trying to get this gun unjammed, I immediately grabbed his arm because I knew that he couldn't shoot me again in the face, or there was no possible way that I would make it.
Right.
So as we're struggling, I'm struggling with him, holding his hand, holding the gun down below my face. He squeezes the trigger, and the gun shoots me in the knee.
Oh my God.
And I'm still standing, unbelievably.
So at this point, you have been shot in the face.
Yes.
You have witnessed one of the closest people in your life be shot, pass away, and you have also been shot in the knee.
Yes.
I think that any realistic person would say, to answer this question, where do we go from here? Most people would think that death would shortly ensue.
Absolutely.
That is not the case. You're still here. So how, from the living room being shot in the knee, where did you Where did this go from here?
Um, from here, by the grace of God, I was still standing, and I knew that I had to get out of the place. I had to get out of there. I was still standing, and if I could still walk at all, I was going to try to get out of there. So, I just I remember hitting Willie Nathan Jones, and I remember struggling with him. I make it out the front door, which happened to still be open. It wasn't latched. I don't know if it was all the way standing open, but I know it was open enough that there was no latch on the door. So I grabbed the doorknob and I make it outside. And so I somehow managed to make it down a step onto the ground off of Rodney's porch. And I knew when I got outside that Rodney left his keys in his vehicle when he was home. He always did this. He lived in such a remote area that
It's a country thing.
yeah, and it was nothing uncommon for him to leave his keys inside of his vehicle. I guess that way he could keep up with them probably, but but anyways, so I bolt out the door and I make it down to the ground, and I make it to Rodney's truck, and I make it to the driver's side of Rodney's truck.
Okay.
And I get the driver's side open, and I look down in the ignition, and I was right. There's Rodney's keys hanging in the ignition. And just as I'm getting, to sit down into the seat, of course, Willie Nathan Jones is in the passenger seat.
Oh my God. Oh wow.
At this point, I don't think he realized that the keys were in the ignition. So I began hitting him with my fist, trying to keep him off of me. At this point, Willie Nathan Jones is actually hitting me in the face with this handgun. But I reached down and I was able to get the truck started. And so it was on the column. Rodney's truck had the gear shift was on the column. I managed to pull it down in low, as far down as I could. And I'm fighting with Willie Nathan Jones, and I don't even think about my car, which is a few feet in front of Rodney's truck. So I crashed into my car, which I didn't hit it too hard, but I'm then in the struggle trying to get it in reverse and also fight off Willie Nathan Jones. And so I do manage to get it into reverse and give it a little bit of gas and enough to back up where I can get around my car. And at that moment, Willie Nathan Jones, he reaches over and he puts the truck into drive.
Oh wow.
Willie Nathan Jones actually lays the gun into his lap at this time. And he reaches over with his other hand to take the keys from the ignition, and which he did. But as he laid the gun into his lap, I was able to retrieve the gun, and I began hitting him with the gun in return.
Oh wow. Wow.
At this point, I'd really give up. I'd lost so much blood. My mouth, I guess the blood in my mouth was coagulating. I knew that the truck was pretty much useless at this point, but I did have this gun. And Willie Nathan Jones, of course, after I'm hitting him with the gun and he has the keys, he exits the vehicle. I'm not sure what he's doing at this point, but I make it to the front of Rodney's truck, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do from here. What are my options? might as well try to make it up the driveway at this point. So I began running the best I can. I guess you would say running, dragging my leg. I began dragging my leg up towards the top of Rodney's driveway.
Wow.
I didn't make it very far. I turn around and I can see that Mr. Jones he's walking up on me. And I really didn't know what to do at this point. I began to give up. I knew that death was soon to follow, but I knew that I couldn't give up just yet. My children were 13 and 14 years old. I believe that's right, around 14 years old. And I knew that I couldn't give up on them. So Willie Nathan Jones, he comes up on me, and I start fighting with him again. My knee ends up giving out on me. I end up on the ground.
And this is where he commences stabbing you.
Well, actually, yes, it is. He actually drugged me back closer to Rodney's residence after I end up on the ground. And at that point, he began stabbing me. He stabbed me 4 times in the face. He stabbed me 4 times in the back, and he stabbed me twice in the face. And so at this point, I really have no idea what he's using to stab me. He also runs this instrument along my neck as if trying to chop my head off back and forth.
Wow.
So I knew that if this was a knife, I'm a goner. Thank God it wasn't. I had to give up at this point. I was out of options. I had fought as long as I could, and I didn't know what to do next. I laid on the ground, and all I could do at this point was play dead.
And where did this idea come from?
I don't know, really.
It was just,
I don't know. Quick thinking. I don't know. Maybe I'd seen it on TV. I don't know, really.
Right.
Um.
So from this point of you are essentially playing possum,
Yes.
to try to get Willie Nathan Jones to pass you over, to think he's killed you, to leave you alone, pretty much, right?
All the above.
Okay, so where did we
And
come?
he does that.
And he did do that.
He did just that. He actually turned and he went back into Rodney's residence. And as soon as I knew that he was inside, I somehow, well, it's really strange, but I was praying this whole time, and it felt like something just scooped me up off the ground. Set me on my feet, and I was gonna get out of there.
And that's just what you did.
I did. I actually, I thought, well, I guess my only option is to climb this driveway.
Okay.
But I was going by Willie Nathan Jones's car. I thought to myself, I wonder if he left his keys in his car for a quick getaway. And so I thought, well, I have to try it. So I run around to the driver's side of Willie Nathan Jones's car, and I jerked the door open. I knew that the keys were in the ignition, so I knew that was my ride out of there. So I sat down in his driver's seat. I started the car up. I slammed the door shut, put it in reverse, and hightail it out of there.
Oh, wow. So you have been shot multiple times, stabbed multiple times, essentially beaten to an inch of your life, witnessed someone you love die, and you are now in the assailant's vehicle driving down the road.
Well, I'm driving up Rodney's driveway, and as I get to the top of Rodney's driveway, I had I knew I couldn't make it to the hospital, so I really had two options, and that was to either go to Rodney's mother and stepfather's house,
Okay.
which that was going to be really hard, uh, or I could go right and go to actually a closer neighbor, and
Why why would that have been really hard?
um, well, I didn't want to put them in any kind of harm's way.
Okay.
They were older than the neighbor. I heard the neighbor out target practicing. I knew that he had some type of weapons at his house.
You'd be safe.
I knew that there was guns there, and I felt that he had some really big mean dogs, and I thought if nothing else that would protect me. As I got into the neighbor's house, I looked to the right down the hallway, and there was a bathroom. And so my mouth was so dry from all this blood that was pouring out of my face. And I asked them if I could use the bathroom. They kindly said yes. I go into the bathroom, and I run water into the sink, and I'm rinsing my mouth out, and I look up in the mirror, and I'm trying to wash my face off, and my face looks just like a pasty, almost green color
Wow.
underneath all the blood. My hair is a mess. I have leaves in my hair. My shirt is completely covered with blood at this point. I'm trying to rinse the neighbor's sink out. I have blood everywhere. As I'm starting back down the hallway, I'm realizing that I'm leaking blood out all over their very light colored carpet. And so, of course, I'm apologizing about their carpet, and they are inviting me back into the living room. And so I see that their kitchen has linoleum. So I go on into the kitchen. They pull up a seat, and they're trying to get me to sit down in the seat. I try to sit down into the seat, and I pretty much collapse onto the kitchen floor. As the paramedics got there, they took the phone from me. They got me on a stretcher. They got me into an ambulance. And I remember looking up at the EMT, and, I asked him, do you think I'm going to live? And he said, you fought this far. He said, just keep fighting.
Sure.
And so that's what I did.
Doing shows like this, Stacy, are things that, are healing. In this line of work, I have often heard that there is a healing that comes through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's why I'm here for you, and that's why the show exists. And you got a good head on your shoulders, it seems like. Anybody who has been able to survive, I mean, yeah, I run through that in my head, and I can't fathom how to get through that. So, I appreciate you being on the show. You are an exceptional individual, and please don't ever forget that. And in the future, we are here for you. But other than that, you have a wonderful rest of your day. And
You too.